skipping is a really important technique to get down. If you really master it, it can sound quite a lot like sweep picking, in that you're covering, you know, a wide intervallic range in a really short space of time, going from low notes to high notes, and, you know, skipping over a lot of notes in the process, which, like I say, sounds quite similar to sweep picking. It's far easier than sweep picking, but you really have to get a good solid legato technique down first, and I also recommend getting into string skipping before you get into sweep picking. I personally use string skipping a lot more than sweep picking, specifically more kind of minor and major shapes as opposed to diminished ones that you heard in the intro to this video. It's just a really good way of covering a lot of ground and ascending or descending from one place to the next in a really quick way. It's a lot easier on the right hand because you're not really worrying too much about the synchronization. A lot of the time when I string skip, it's legato on the left hand, so only picking one note. So it's far easier to get into than sweep picking, but like I say, it really does demand a lot more out of your left hand maybe. So some people might not be too familiar with diminished shapes or diminished scales, but they're actually a really good starting point for string skipping because they are symmetrical scales. So if I was just to play the scale on the low E string, the diminished scale, they go up 1 fret, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets. And diminished arpeggios kind of tend to go up when a lot of people play them just every 3 frets. The main reason this is a really easy way to get into string skipping is a lot of the strings that you're skipping over, you tend to fall on the exact same shapes. So for instance, on the G and the E string, you'll be playing the exact same frets. Or a different type of shape would be. Another thing that diminished shapes are really good for is forcing your hands to kind of stretch out more. They're very kind of stretchy shapes to learn. And yeah, it's just really good to kind of get used to stretching your fingers out if you're not playing anything too demanding, you know, in just regular kind of scales. So it is really beneficial to kind of get into this for the, you know, the stretching aspect. And another reason it's good to get into string skipping before you get into sweep picking is it gets your left hand really used to doing wide stretches. So a lot of kind of sweep picking shapes start off with quite a wide stretch. If your fingers are already used to kind of stretching out really wide, this is just a really good thing to get down first, and it's a lot easier, and it's always good to progress on guitar by going from the easiest to the hardest instead of jumping straight into sweep picking and then going back to string skipping. It's also just a fun way of practicing legato. You're kind of doing 2 techniques at once. A lot of the time you can be, you know, doing legato stuff and at the same time getting used to string skipping and trying to get that really clean as well. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1 kind of thing to practice. So before getting into the diminished shapes, it's really good to just get used to it on just a basic kind of pentatonic scale. So just like an A minor pentatonic. And getting used to just skipping over strings and just come up with your own kind of ways of ascending and descending. So stuff like... So I'm going from the E string to the D string, then back to the A string, then over the D string to the G string, and so on. So you just kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. Another way of picking that would be... So pentatonic shapes are really basic starting point. So for the diminished stuff, some good shapes that you can do on the G and the E string, skipping over the B string, would be if you're starting on the 7th fret on the G and the 8th fret, then you hammer on to the 11th fret. You do exactly the same frets on the high E string. And you move up to the 8th fret, hammer on to the 10th fret, and then hammer on to the 13th fret. Do exactly the same on the high E. And then essentially that first shape we did, we're back to that kind of shape, but it's 3 frets up, so we're here on the 10th fret. So you're doing 10, 11, 14, 10, 11, 14. Then the second shape we did, So essentially you start to see these kind of familiar shapes appearing. So the first shape we did, you got 1 fret up, then 3 frets up from that. And the second shape was 2 frets up, 3 frets up from that one. Then we're back to the first shape, so 1 fret, 3 frets, 1 fret, 3 frets, 2 frets, 3 frets. So like I said, this is why learning diminished shapes is really useful for getting into string skipping, because it's all symmetrical and you just do exactly the same frets, so it's really easy to get used to doing. Another more common shape that I've used quite a few times in the past that you can move around in all kinds of places is this one. So this is a really easy one to remember, and it's just moving up 3 frets the whole time. So if we're starting again on the D, up 3 frets, up another 3, same again on the high E. And then when you want to ascend or descend, you're just moving up 3 frets again. So if you wanted to incorporate some other strings into this with the diminished stuff, it's really easy again. You're just 1 fret below the G string there if you're going on to the D. So to give you an example, let's stay in this first position. It'd just be 1 fret below on the D. So I'm going from the D string to the B string, which are also symmetrical, so they ascend exactly the same way as the G and the E strings do. So you've got so that's the diminished kind of stuff. Hopefully you don't need any tabs for that. It's really easy to get used to just doing. These kind of diminished string skipping arpeggios you can play in like the harmonic minor scale or the Phrygian dominant, which is kind of a mode within that. Another thing to get into doing, which isn't that hard, is adding some tap notes in there. Which, like I say, isn't too hard to get into doing because it's really easy to just get used to just ascending every 3 frets. So if you've got a string skipping arpeggio like this one, really easy to just tap 3 frets above the highest note there. So to slow that right down and show you what I'm doing. So these diminished string skipping shapes are really good, like I say, for getting your hands used to stretching out. Maybe to begin with, just start a bit higher up the fretboard where the frets are a bit closer together before going down to where I was. And yeah, like I said, it's just really good to practice this with a metronome and just picking once per string just to get used to it being more of a legato kind of thing, and it really helps build up the left hand, but eventually getting used to kind of picking the notes at the same time. It's good to get used to doing both.